Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to Stately Vaughan Manor, where Roger and I have returned. For my weekly reading report, it's time for my weekly reading report, that fantastic program where I talk about all the stuff that I read last week. And I read some stuff. It was actually a pretty good reading week for a change. What? You know, I just started the video. Don't you guys start causing trouble. My dogs, they like to cause trouble when I'm trying to make a video. Anyway, let me pull out the list for my 500 book challenge. The 500 book challenge. The challenge where I have to read 500 books that I own before I'll buy any new ones. So where did I leave off? Okay, I think I was about to read The Shadow when I left off last week. So book number 259 was The Shadow. The Shadow. Mobsman on the Spot, which was the third book in the Pyramid series of shadow novels. So this is a series that reprinted shadow pulps, the stories from the shadow pulps from back in the 1930s. The Shadow, one of the greatest pulp characters of all time, huge influence on Batman. So much so that Batman's first story in Detective Comics was just a ripoff of a story in a shadow pulp. And they're always fun. And I've decided that I'm going to read one Doc Savage novel every month and one shadow novel every month. And this is the shadow novel that I just read, which features a cover from the original Shadow magazine, as opposed to the Steranko covers that you usually get on this series of books. So I read this book, and it's really, really good. This is a really good shadow novel. Excellent pulp crime story where the Shadow enlists the aid of an ex-gangster, basically. It's a guy with a criminal record who just got out of prison. And the Shadow enlists him as an agent. And he uses him as an agent to help bust up a mob, which he does. And it's great fun. Really, really good shadow novel. Highly recommended if you ever see it anywhere. Some of these shadow books are a little difficult to find because I don't think any of them, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of these are available as ebooks, which would be the easiest way to get them if they were available, but I don't think that they are. And I don't know that any of these shadow novels are currently in print. There was a reprint series that happened a few years ago, but that finished. And I don't think there's anything currently in print for The Shadow, but who knows? But this old series of paperbacks is excellent, and this was a great book. So The Shadow, Mobsman on the Spot. I highly recommend it. It's awesome. The next shadow novel that I'll be reading for next month does have a Steranko cover. And so this is book 4 in the Pyramid series. I figure I'll just go through the Pyramid series and then read the other shadow books that I have from other publishers. The next month's book is Hands in the Dark. Hands in the Dark by Walter Gibson under the house name of Maxwell Grant. That is another great Steranko cover. Steranko did some excellent covers for this series of shadow novels, and I really like that one. He's hanging out in a sarcophagus, a lot like yours, Roger. Only he doesn't have a bunch of blood on the lid like yours does. Oh well, this looks like it's going to be another good one. Hands in the Dark. That's next month. So that was the first book I read. That was book number 259. Next. Oh wait, hold on. I have to be properly attired, because the next thing I read was for June on the Range. June on the Range. All this month, here in June, it's been June on the Range, a celebration of Western fiction. So I gotta break out the Western duds, Roger. Roger, he just hasn't gotten into the spirit of things. You could at least try it and, got a cowboy hat or something. Where were we? Book number 260. Book 260 was a fantastic book. It was this one, Zane Grey's Robber's Roost. And I have this old beat up copy of Robber's Roost with this fantastic 1970s photo cover, which just makes it even more awesome than it already was. So Robber's Roost by Zane Grey. So this was great. This was a great book, which I read for June on the Range. It was almost the best book that I've read for June on the Range. Almost. It came close. So this is the story of an outlaw who you know, he's our main character. And it was interesting reading this book because here we have a main character, unlike, you know, a lot of books where the main character is just like a super good guy. This guy he's kind of a dirtbag. He's a criminal. He's an outlaw. And he joins up with some other outlaws, and they're hired by this really naive English guy who in Utah bought a ranch, and it's very dangerous in lawless Utah at the time that this was written. And this rancher wants to hire a bunch of gunfighters to keep his herd protected and to keep his ranch protected. And so he does. But of course, gunfighters cannot be trusted because they're criminals, usually. So he hires all of these shifty criminals. And of course, they turn on him and steal steal part of his herd and sell them, rustle his cattle. And eventually his beautiful sister comes and visits him and comes to live with him on the ranch. And one of the head gunfighters, one of the head criminals, kidnaps her and steals a bunch of money from this naive rancher and makes a getaway. And our hero in the book is kind of caught up in this. And he is, of course, fallen in love with the beautiful young woman. And so he plans on rescuing her as soon as they get a chance. So this criminal who has kidnapped this young lady and his gang go to Robber's Roost, a hideout that he's got up in a valley someplace, hidden away, and it's really hard to get to. And he figures he'll be safe there. But there's a gang of other outlaws who are also hired by this guy, who are after them. And they're even worse than the outlaws that are in the group that our hero is trying to rescue the girl from. So there's a lot going on, and it's full of action, very high on melodrama, as Zane Grey usually is. But it's all very well done. I have a high tolerance for melodrama, so I didn't mind it at all. And it's excellent. Great characters in this book. Zane Grey really knocked it out of the park as far as the characters are concerned in here. All the criminals, all the outlaws are really interesting. And it has a wonderful sense of place. It all takes place in Utah. And Zane Grey is superb at describing the scenery and the area where this story takes place. That was a great strength of Zane Grey. Most of his stories have a great sense of place, and this one certainly does. Excellent, excellent story. The melodrama is dialed up to 11 by the end of the story, but that's okay. That's okay. I still thought it was great. And like I said, it was almost the best thing that I read for June on the Range this year. It was that good. Next, book 261. Book 261. I'm not going to change outfits, Roger. I'm just going to stay in my cowboy gear, even though we're talking about Conan. So 261. Conan, thrice marked for death. So this is from the new Conan series from Titan Comics. This is the second storyline. And so every storyline so far, I believe, in this series has been about 4 issues long, because 4 issues fit well into a trade paperback. And so this is the second 4-issue storyline, which takes place after Conan lost Belit in the story Queen of the Black Coast, a story by Robert E. Howard. This is really good. I really liked this one. The first series from Titan Comics and Heroic Signatures was really good, but I was still skeptical after the first series. Even though the artwork is fantastic and it was a really good story, I was still skeptical because I figured, you know what, they have to screw this up, you know. But it was with this series of issues, because I read these as original issues when they came out. It was with this series of issues that I stopped being a skeptic and became a believer in this series, because this is really good and tremendously violent, which, you know, is important. The artwork is excellent. The artwork in this issue in this storyline is done by Doug Braithwaite. Jim Zub is still doing the story. And it's, like I said, it's really, really good. This is just an excellent Conan story. Horrifically violent, as you want in a Conan story. And so this is awesome. I really like this one. Not everybody did, because the ending, some people didn't like the ending, although you kind of needed the ending the way it was to go to the next storyline, which I will be talking about next week. So fantastic altogether. This was really good. I like this one. Thrice Marked for Death, Conan the Barbarian, the second trade paperback in the new Conan the Barbarian series. Although this series has been going on for a couple of years now, and I keep expecting it to get bad, and it hasn't. And part of that is because Jim Zub is, I think, stuck with the series. And I haven't heard that he's leaving, so that's a good thing. If he keeps sticking with the series, we'll probably continue to have an excellent Conan series. So this was really good. I was happy with this when I originally read it, and as a graphic novel, if you read all the 4 issues together, it's really good. The only real criticism I have for this series, or the biggest criticism, it's not the only criticism, but the biggest criticism I would have is probably that a lot of the covers are kind of static. There are a lot of covers where you just have Conan and maybe another character standing around holding weapons, like this one right here, which tend to be pretty forgettable. Maybe there's some reason for that. Maybe covers like this sell better. I don't know. Here you've got a little action going on. Now this is the way you do a cover right there, where Conan's fighting all these people, or creatures, I should say. That's by Alex Horley. That's more like what I would want to see in a Conan cover. You still have Conan, you know, with a weapon, but at least he's doing something. I like the action-y covers better, but maybe they don't sell as well. Who knows? I don't know. But this is good. That was really good. And so that was book number 261, which brings us to 262, which is the last book that I finished this week. And it is the best book. It is the best book that I read for June on the Range. And that is from Richard Matheson. This is By the Gun, 6 from Richard Matheson. So this is 6 short stories, 6 short westerns that Richard Matheson wrote. Richard Matheson, who is probably best known for his novel, I Am Legend. He also wrote The Shrinking Man and a bunch of other novels. He also famously wrote a ton of short stories, and he also wrote some Twilight Zone episodes, which are held in very high regard. He was really, really good, Richard Matheson. He's one of my favorite writers. So it shouldn't surprise me that this book is as good as it is. It does surprise me a little bit, and it has in the past, when I've read some of his other Western stuff, just how good he is at writing Westerns. He wrote a bunch of different stuff. He's most famous, of course, for his science fiction horror kind of thing that he would write. But these are just straight Westerns, and they're so well done. Really good, very suspenseful, just excellent. And yeah, a great read. Highest recommendation if you ever see this lying around. This is an Evans Western. This is a first edition. I'm sure it was published again in paperback. I don't think I've seen the paperback edition, but I'm pretty sure there is one of this. So yeah, if you ever see this, get it. It's really, really good. And an excellent collection of Western stories. Pretty short. It's a pretty short book, but it doesn't matter. It's that good. So yeah, By the Gun, 6 from Richard Matheson. Highest recommendation on that one. Okay, so those are all of the books that I finished. What am I reading right now? Well, if you saw my last video, you know what I'm reading right now. It's Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. Yeehaw! So I'm already at chapter 6, but I've only read 18 pages. So these chapters so far, I just started this a couple hours ago. This book has really, really short chapters, at least up to this point. You know, because like every time you're about to fall asleep, the chapter ends. Keep you awake, keep you going. I'm just kidding. This is actually pretty good, I have to say. It is well written. It's funny. It's clever. It's probably going to end up being a really good book. And that's the thing about classics, even if they're probably not in line with your taste. Classics tend to be pretty good. Sometimes they're really, really good. That's usually why they're classics. Not always. There are some books that are classics for reasons other than their quality as stories, but usually classics are pretty darn good. Usually that's why they're classics. Of course, there are plenty of great books that have been forgotten, but books that are remembered the way this one is are usually remembered for a reason. So it really, in all seriousness, it doesn't surprise me that this book is good and is probably going to end up being really good. It probably will earn its reputation, but I'm only 19 pages in, even though I'm on chapter 6. Yeah, so far I'm on Team Darcy all the way. I would be an arrogant guy too if I had to hang out with all these people. So yeah, there you go, Pride and Prejudice. You will hear all about this book next week, but these things are not all that I read because I've got a million comic books that I'm reading. You know that I'm reading every issue of the Fantastic Four from the first run of the Fantastic Four, which ran from 1961 to 1996, at which point it was canceled and brought back immediately for the Heroes Reborn reboot. But I'm reading all of the original run, which lasted a long time, and now I'm in the 80s. I'm in 1986 right now. John Byrne has left the book. His run on the Fantastic Four is legend in comic book circles. It was every bit as good as its reputation suggests. It was a great run on the Fantastic Four, but he's gone now. So now we have to continue without John Byrne. And luckily, the issues immediately following his departure have been pretty good. They've been written by Roger Stern for the most part. Although at this point, it looks like we're going to be getting some different writers. The last issue I read was issue 302. Issue 302. And who wrote that? It was a Roger Stern plot, but Tom DeFalco wrote the script. The artwork up to this point has been by John Buscema and Sal Buscema, which is wonderful. The artwork has been pretty great. John Buscema already had a legendary run on the Fantastic Four, and even at this point, he's still really, really good on the Fantastic Four. Just really good stuff. And Sal Buscema is a great inker. I really like Sal Buscema a lot as an artist. But one thing Sal Buscema really likes to do is he likes to ink. That's something that he really enjoys. And you can tell because his inks are always good. And he's really good at inking his brother John. And at this point in the 80s, Sal Buscema just had become a really good artist. You could find a lot of his work on Spectacular Spider-Man. He was on that book forever. And he had worked on as an artist. He took over for Walter Simonson as an artist on Thor and was great. And he's really good here as an inker for John Buscema. So the artwork has been really, really good. And it looks like John Buscema is an artist for a while on this book, I think, for a little while. But one thing I'm looking forward to is that this Epic Collection, this is All in the Family, this has the 4-issue Fantastic Four versus the X-Men miniseries, which I haven't read since 1986, so, or 87, whenever this came out. So I'm looking forward to those 4 issues, because I remember this being a Dynamite series. So, yeah, I'm having a great time with Fantastic Four. Still having a good time with that. One thing I had forgotten about was poor Aquaman. The previous couple weeks, I had not picked this up because I had just read too much other stuff. And even right now, I didn't read much of this last week just because I had so much other stuff to read. But I'm going to catch up because I want to, I'm way behind on my DC Finest volumes. I mean, I get one of these DC Finest volumes almost every week. I think 3 of them come out a month, usually. And I still haven't read Aquaman. But it's really, really good. And, the stories are ridiculous and silly, but the artwork is great. Look at that. That's the copycat creature, which I'm really looking forward to. Most of the artwork was done by, I don't have my glasses on, so hopefully I'll be able to see it. Of course, they have it in tiny writing. Ramona, is that Frieden? Ramona Frieden. And great art in this volume. And a lot of fun stories. So, I'm still early in this book. I'm only 100 pages into a 500-page book. Yeah, so I got a lot of this yet to read. But that's not the only thing I'm reading. Of course, I also have my Marvel Monster Plan, where I'm reading a bunch of horror comic books, including The Tomb of Dracula, which I'm reading in the Essential volumes. I have all 4 Essential volumes of The Tomb of Dracula. I didn't read too many of these, only a couple. I'm on issue 13, where Blade the Vampire Hunter and the other vampire hunters have tracked down Dracula, it looks like. And it looks like Dracula could be in some trouble. The most significant thing that happened in the issues that I recently read are that Dracula turns Quincy Harker's daughter into a vampire. Quincy Harker, the old vampire hunter, his daughter up to this point has just been like, the person to get into trouble, and the person that needs to be rescued. But Dracula, drawn magnificently by Gene Colan, manages to get her and turn her into a vampire. So Quincy Harker has to stake his own daughter, which was tragic. So this continues to be good stuff from Marv Wolfman. I'm also reading, as an anthology right now, one of the anthology series, Tower of Shadows. Reading an issue of this a week. It only lasted 9 issues. And then it became my favorite anthology series, anthology horror series, which was Creatures on the Loose, which also had a bunch of sword and sorcery stuff in it. It was just awesome. But before it became Creatures on the Loose, it was Tower of Shadows. And this is number 2 of Tower of Shadows. Great cover. Don't dare miss Witch Hunt. I read the story Witch Hunt. You could miss it. It wasn't that great. Is that the mailman? The dogs are telling me it's the mailman. It's the mailman. I don't know why that mailman gave me such a weird look. Doesn't have good fashion sense, I guess. Anyway, where were we? Oh yeah. Tower of Shadows. The Menace of the Hungry One. And Don't Dare Miss the Witch Hunt. So this is a good issue of Tower of Shadows, but not as good as issue number 1. First of all, no Steranko in this issue. We start off with Don Heck. Don Heck, who is not bad. This is a story by Roy Thomas. with a twist ending, which isn't really much of a twist. I like Don Heck, and I usually like Don Heck on stories like this. He used to do a lot of good stories and Tales of Suspense and all those anthology series back in the 50s. In this story, though, it's just the story is not that good, and the twist ending you could see from a mile away, and it sort of felt like it was trying to be an EC Comics horror story, but it couldn't be. It just couldn't be. So the first story is okay. The second story is better because it has John Buscema on art. Who's the writer here? Gary Friedrich is the writer on this story. Automation's going to get your job. But again, in this story, we have an ending that you can see from a mile away. So the surprise ending is an ending anybody could see coming. Although the artwork is good. John Buscema does a good job on the art, as always. So, better than the first story. The best thing in this issue, though, is the third and last story, because the best is for last here, because we have Neil Adams in One Hungers. And Neil Adams actually wrote the story. The story is not that great. It's not that great of a story, but the artwork is really, really good. And so that is the reason to get this issue. We have our 1971 hippies there, or 1970. I guess it was still 1970 at this point. And so, yeah, good stuff on the art. But the story is kind of ridiculous. So, not the best issue of Tower of Shadows, but not bad either. It was better than, a lot of comics, but not as good as a lot of others. So, if you were to compare this to a typical issue of one of DC's horror anthologies, like House of Secrets, this doesn't match up to that. That was a particularly good series, but it's not bad, and not as good as the last issue. We'll see how issue 3 is. We'll see how issue 3 turns out. Good cover, though. I really, really like the cover. That cover is awesome. And I think that's everything. Yeah, that's everything. Okay, guys, I'll shut up now. I have a really exciting video coming up tomorrow. Hopefully, if all goes well, I will catch you next time.